I'd like to start by offering our deepest sympathies and condolences to the Rodriguez family for their loss, and they are certainly in our thoughts and our prayers. There's been a lot of speculation regarding the incident that occurred in the early morning of February 15th, just after midnight, in the parking lot of the Warren Theater. While this thorough investigation is ongoing, here's what can be released at this time. 5 police officers were present. 3 of those were Moore police officers. 2 of those were Oklahoma game warden officers. Those 2 officers were working security at the theater, and 1 Moore police officer was working security at the theater. The 2 on-duty officers from the Moore Police Department were already at the theater on an unrelated call. These officers were advised by a customer of a physical fight in the parking lot. The customer identified the 3 individuals that were involved in the fight. Officers approached, and the individuals then separated from each other. Mr. Rodriguez made statements that led officers to believe that the fight was a case of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a serious situation, and officers are obligated to investigate all matters of suspected domestic violence. The altercation between the members of the Rodriguez family, which was reported by the eyewitness, made this situation a criminal matter. Officers tried to explain the criminal nature of the situation to Mr. Rodriguez, and he was uncooperative. He tried to leave and took an aggressive stance. One of the officers attempted to detain Mr. Rodriguez, at which time Mr. Rodriguez tossed the officer off of his arm. The additional officers assisted in an attempt to detain him, and Mr. Rodriguez was continuing to be uncooperative. At some point during the attempt to detain, pepper spray was used by an officer. There is no indication that batons or any other weapons were used at any point. Once some control was gained, officers were able to handcuff Mr. Rodriguez. 2 sets of handcuffs were linked together due to his large size. Once handcuffed, officers called for EMS response, which is common protocol when force is used. The ambulance was already in the theater parking lot dealing with the previous matter, so EMS response was within moments. Mr. Rodriguez was transported to the hospital less than a block away. I'd like to address some of the specific information that has been reported. Identification being one. Officers did ask Mr. Rodriguez for his identification, which is proper protocol when investigating a domestic event, domestic abuse event. However, it was his actions, taking an aggressive physical stance, and his refusal to be cooperative with the investigation that led officers to believe he needed to be detained. The cell phone. Officers learned at the scene that there was a video evidence on the cell phone, and the phone was seized to preserve that evidence. Investigators observed the chain of custody and obtained a search warrant, and the video was copied. We have made an attempt to return this phone to Mrs. Rodriguez this afternoon. Injuries. As far as the altercation, an independent witness has stated that they observed the incident and never observed a beating occur, but did see officers attempting to grab Mr. Rodriguez's limbs to get control of him. They described it as the officers actively trying to get an out-of-control person under control. I know these officers, and I know their hearts. I don't feel that they would approach any situation with ill intentions. It is my intention and my duty to thoroughly investigate this incident, collect all evidence, conduct all interviews, and turn over a full and thorough investigation to the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office for a thorough review. We do believe there may be other witnesses to this incident and would ask that they come forward if they have any information. We will take a few questions, but we will not answer any questions that will compromise the ongoing investigation.
Chief, what was when the approach Mr. Rodriguez, what do you know what the cops told him, trying to get him to stop and understand that he was being looked at or they needed him to stop?
Right. I mean, that, again, that's part of the investigation. That still, we have not completed our interviews with the officers, and that's part of what we're trying to determine right now. That's why we haven't been able to get specific and still can't, because we want to do a responsible investigation.
What can you tell us about the 3 officers involved, time spent on the force?
We have one of the officers has been there 6 years, 6 years. I believe it's 3 years for the other and 1.5 for the other.
Chief, are any other agencies going to step in to investigate this possible police brutality accusation?
I have not had any contact from any other agencies. That is certainly a viable option. We don't have anything to hide. The district attorney may decide that that needs to be done. Once he examines the case, that will be up to him.
And you're streaming live on newschannel4.com. Can you tell us a little bit about, is it legal for a police officer to use physical force on a person that they are arresting, such as striking or hitting them?
Yes, and those necessary force is legal to use when effecting an arrest. But that is being investigated, and that is part of the investigation, and will be determined legally and policy-wise.
Are you able to tell us anything? Did the video that you were able to get from her phone or from the theater, was that able to help with any of the stories that you've been told so far? Match up, I guess.
There have been a lot of stories. Some have been accurate, some have not. What she has is a partial video of the incident that we just needed time to do a forensic analysis on and make a copy of. We want to get that phone back to her as quick as possible, and that video is hers to do with as she wishes.
Was Mr. Rodriguez still conscious whenever he was had the handcuffs placed on him?
That's part of the investigation that we're not going to talk about right now.
Chief Stelling, have you heard or seen the Warren Theater security video?
There is a Warren Theater security video. It's a parking lot video of cameras in the parking lot. It's not real clear. That's another thing that the investigators are looking at.
Chief, were the game wardens involved in the actual physical detainment of Mr. Rodriguez?
All 5 officers were involved.
Why did it take 5 officers to take him down?
I don't know if you've ever tried to handcuff someone. It's very difficult to do if you do not want to be handcuffed. We all go through that in our training. We get handcuffed, and we try to keep from being handcuffed. When you are dealing with someone who's very large and strong, it's very difficult to do, and the officers do their best to get the subject under control as quickly as possible to reduce the time of the altercation. So they use as much force as necessary to get that done quickly. And, each person has 4 limbs that they can swing and flail. Well, that's 4 people. You see what I'm saying?
Was he flailing all 4 of his limbs?
I'm not going to, that's again part of the investigation. I can just, tell you that it took all 5 of them.
Was he, when he arrived at the hospital, do you know if he was still considered alive and they put him in critical condition, or was he pronounced dead pretty quickly?
I'm really not going to get into that part. The investigators are following up on that. We have, issues for, medical issues and things like that I'm not an expert in that. As far as that goes, and a lot of this information is going to have to be determined by the medical examiner's office. And right now, they're not releasing a lot of information because have not completed their investigation. So.
Chief, what did you think when you saw the cell phone video?
There wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a complete copy of the event. I didn't see anything inappropriate on the cell phone video.
Chief, what do you have to say to the people at home who may have heard these stories and heard the rumors and have lost their confidence in Warren PD?
I would say that in these incidents, we have to have time If we come out and we start speculating the very next day after one of these events happens, information's not going to be accurate. It's not going to be correct. We have to have the time to confirm that information, and we're not going to do that. We are not going to go out and speculate on purported facts until we know until we can confirm those with as much information as we have. So
That's why you need more witnesses to come forward.
we do, and we still have more witnesses to interview. So.
Jay Stillings, do you know if Luis made any physical contact with his wife or daughter? Police say that he was threatened. Do you know those two?
That's, again, part of what's being reviewed in the investigation, and probably not appropriate to comment on that right now.
Do you know if he had any prior history with legal issues from police?
I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware.
You mentioned one independent witness. Can you tell us if there were others and how many others who might have witnessed?
There's only one independent witness that has come forward. Actually, there's two. There's two that have come forward, and we haven't completed interviews with them, only preliminary discussions. But there's a lot of people that frequent that area, so that's why we think if there's anyone out there that saw this that can help shed some light on it, we would appreciate them contacting us.
Chief, can you just explain to me what Rodriguez was doing to cause the arrest?
The officers were investigating a crime, okay? And in order to investigate that crime, they have to talk to people involved. They don't know who the suspect is. They don't know who the witnesses are. They've just had a third party tell them that a physical altercation has occurred and these three people were involved. We're obligated to detain and investigate. And if someone does not cooperate with that investigation, we have to do what we have to do to get that information, because we don't know what's going to happen once we release these people. We don't know what happens behind closed doors after, and so we're obligated to find out, make sure everybody or it's investigated.
So what was he doing to not cooperate? What was his action?
I think I said that in my statement. He basically would not provide any identifying information, was trying to leave. He was he had, eventually, when he was told he could not leave, he took an aggressive stance, clenching his fists, things like that, and the officers felt threatened at that point.
Mrs. Rodriguez has admitted that she slapped her daughter. Is there any trouble for her based on the events of that night before what happened with him, since she's admitted that she was the one that?
Right. We'll take that to the district attorney also. He will make his determination as to whether that should be pursued or not.
Have any of the officers been involved in any incidents like this before, where they had been investigated for treatment of suspected?
Off the top of my head, not that I'm aware of.
How often does an in-custody death like this happen anymore?
I can't recall it happening in the last probably 20 years. I could be wrong. That's just off the top of my head.
You mentioned that Ms. Rodriguez's cell phone video was not a complete video of the incident. She has said herself she was some distance away from the actual incident. Can you tell us a little bit about the vantage point of that video and what stage of the incident she started recording?
I think that's getting ready to go public. I mean, you'll see it. You'll see the video.
Do you plan on releasing it?
At this point, we don't, because we're still investigating, but as I said, we're trying to return that phone to Mrs. Rodriguez. And, no, she said she was busy right now, but we have contacted her and asked her to, help us make arrangements to get it back to her.
Chief, protocol for an arrest, if they're resisting it, you subdue them to the point where they can't be taken into custody. Just want to get the policy there that you tell your officers.
Right. The policy is that whatever force is reasonable and necessary, and that's standard. That's the law. It's whatever is reasonable and necessary. If each person is different, okay, what you're dealing with is different. Each person that you're trying to arrest maybe more difficult than the other, maybe more cooperative or less cooperative. So that's what the district attorney is going to have to review. That's what we will review. Was it reasonable and necessary?
From the time that your officers approached Mr. Rodriguez, do you know how long the actual encounter took place before they were able to restrain him?
Again, I'd be just kind of guessing off the top of my head. All that will be when the investigation is completed. I mean, I don't mean to hold any information, but I don't want to say things that I don't have the facts confirmed on. So
How long will those officers be on leave?
until the investigation is completed, until there's determination if there are any issues with the actions that they took.
What happens now in the investigation? What's the next steps?
We still have a lot of work to do. We have more interviews to do. We have to examine some of the physical evidence, and then we need to put that all together and take it to the district attorney, where he will go over it, make a thorough review, and then he will get with me and let me know what his findings are.
Chief, I know that from your standpoint, this man was out of line. But what do you have to say to the people who say, bottom line, this man didn't deserve to die at the hands of officers?
I would say, first of all, that it's always important to cooperate. And for whatever reason, you decide to, I think this situation could have been resolved in a matter of a few minutes had and we could have gotten the information we needed. I understand that, people are in a heightened situation. They're with the way they feel during those situations. But as I said, I don't believe any of my officers go into an event with ill intentions. They want to get in there and they want to get the information and they want to do their job and they want to make sure people are protected, and that if there's a crime that's occurred, that is investigated properly, and that they get that information to the investigators and we prosecute if necessary. I would just say that I think it's irresponsible to have snap judgments, to not reserve judgment until the facts come out. I know that's difficult to do in today's day and time with the immediate need for information and social media and those things. But unfortunately, when it comes to investigations, it's a better option to be methodical, to be careful.
I'll take one more.
Is there, as far as amount of time, when do you, as hope to be able to get it all completed, done, the investigation, everything completed?
Well, our investigations, we go until the need is, until we don't need to, and until we have nothing else to, we take it where it leads us. So if it takes a week, it takes a week. If it takes 2 weeks, it takes 2 weeks, but we want to do it correctly. That's the main issue. One more, this lady here.
Have you spoken with the officers, and are they remorseful? I mean,
I've spoken with the officers, and they're concerned. No one in this police department ever relishes these kinds of moments, and I just I just want them to know that I know it's a difficult job, what they do, and they have my support.